Marcus Chen adjusted the collar of his thrift store button-down shirt as he walked through the main entrance of Riverside Elementary School. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished linoleum floors. His weathered hands carried a simple canvas bag containing a few notebooks and pencils, the modest supplies of a substitute teacher trying to make ends meet. The hallways buzzed with the energy of 800 children preparing for another day of learning. Marcus moved with quiet purpose, his steps measured and deliberate in a way that spoke of discipline most people never noticed. To the rushing teachers and chattering students, he was just another temporary face, someone to fill a gap until the real teacher returned. Principal Rebecca Stone emerged from her office, her sharp heels clicking against the floor with authority. She spotted Marcus immediately, her expression shifting to barely concealed irritation. Mrs. Stone had made her feelings about substitute teachers abundantly clear during his brief orientation the previous week. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," she said, her tone professional but cold. "You'll be covering Mrs. Patterson's third-grade class again today. I trust you remember the lesson plans we discussed." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Yes, ma'am. The children were working on their reading comprehension yesterday. We made good progress." Mrs. Stone's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if surprised that a mere substitute would track student progress. "Just follow the curriculum, Mr. Chen. These children need structure and consistency, not experimental teaching methods." As she walked away, Marcus caught sight of a familiar face bouncing down the hallway. Emma Chen, his 80-year-old daughter, approached with her backpack bouncing against her small frame. Her dark eyes sparkled with pride as she saw her father. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered, glancing around to make sure none of her classmates were watching. "Are you teaching the big kids again today?" Marcus knelt down to her level, his stern features softening completely. "That's right, sweetheart. Are you ready for your spelling test?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "I studied all the words you helped me with last night. The hard ones too." "You're going to do great," Marcus said, gently smoothing her hair. "Remember what we talked about. Sometimes people are more than what they appear to be on the surface." As Emma hurried off to join her classmates, Marcus stood slowly, watching her disappear around the corner. For her sake, he had left behind everything he once was, trading combat boots for classroom shoes, tactical gear for teaching supplies. Here at Riverside Elementary, he was simply Mr. Chen, the quiet substitute teacher who worked for modest daily wages. Where in the world are you watching from right now? He wondered silently, thinking of all the parents around the globe who made similar sacrifices for their children's futures. But as Marcus headed toward his temporary classroom, neither he nor anyone else at Riverside Elementary could imagine that before this day ended, every single person in the building would discover exactly who Marcus Chen really was. The third-grade classroom welcomed Marcus with its cheerful chaos of colorful posters and tiny desks arranged in perfect rows. 24 students filed in, their voices creating a symphony of excitement and morning energy. Marcus stood at the front, observing each child with the same careful attention he once used to assess entirely different situations. "Good morning, class," Marcus said, his voice warm but commanding. "Yesterday we discovered that books can take us anywhere in the world. Today, we're going to explore how words can be our most powerful tools." Sarah Martinez raised her hand tentatively. "Mr. Chen, Mrs. Patterson never talks about words being tools. She just makes us read the same stories over and over." Marcus smiled, recognizing the spark of curiosity that real learning required. "Sometimes, Sarah, we need to look at familiar things in new ways. Who can tell me about a time when words helped them solve a problem?" The children's hands shot up eagerly, their enthusiasm infectious. Marcus listened to each response, filing away details about their personalities, their strengths, their needs. His mental assessment was thorough and automatic, a skill developed through years of reading people in situations where lives depended on accurate judgment. From the doorway, Principal Stone watched with growing concern. She had specifically instructed all substitute teachers to stick rigidly to lesson plans, yet here was Mr. Chen encouraging students to think beyond the prescribed curriculum. Her jaw tightened as she observed the children's animated participation. "Mr. Chen," Mrs. Stone interrupted, stepping into the classroom. "Might I have a word with you in the hallway?" Marcus nodded to his students. "Continue discussing your examples quietly. I'll be right back." In the corridor, Mrs. Stone's displeasure was unmistakable. "Mr. Chen, I've noticed you're deviating from Mrs. Patterson's established routine. These children need consistency, not your personal teaching philosophy." Marcus remained calm, his posture respectful but unwavering. "The children are engaged and learning, Mrs. Stone. Sometimes connecting with students requires flexibility." "What time is it where you are as you're listening to this story unfold?" Marcus thought, remembering how his own father had taught him that real strength often meant standing firm while appearing to bend. Mrs. Stone's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Chen, you're here temporarily. Please remember your place and follow the established protocols. These children's education is too important for experimentation." As she walked away, Marcus returned to his classroom, where 24 pairs of eyes watched him with concern. He had seen that same look before, in different faces, in places where uncertainty meant danger. The remainder of the morning passed in careful balance. Marcus guided his students through their reading exercises while maintaining the appearance of following prescribed protocols. Yet his keen observation never ceased. He noticed Tommy Williams favoring his left arm, suggesting possible trouble at home. He saw Jessica Park's advanced comprehension skills being stifled by materials far below her capability. Every detail registered and filed away. During lunch break, Marcus found himself alone in the faculty lounge, heating a simple sandwich in the microwave. The other teachers chatted among themselves, their conversations flowing around him as if he were invisible. He had grown accustomed to this treatment, the way permanent staff viewed substitutes as temporary inconveniences rather than colleagues. Through the window, he watched Emma playing with her classmates on the playground. Her laughter carried across the courtyard, a sound that made every sacrifice worthwhile. 2 years ago, he had walked away from a career that defined him, trading purpose for the promise of stability she deserved. "Mr. Chen," a voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Janet Rodriguez, the school secretary, approaching with a concerned expression. "There's been a change in your afternoon assignment. Mrs. Thompson called in sick, so you'll need to cover her 5th grade class as well." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "How many students total?" 47 between both classes, Janet replied. "I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only substitute available today." "I can handle it," Marcus said simply, though his mind was already calculating logistics, room layouts, escape routes. The automatic assessment embarrassed him, a reminder of habits that should have been buried in his past. The afternoon brought new challenges as Marcus moved between the two classrooms, managing the complex dynamics of older students who tested every boundary. During a particularly difficult moment with a group of 5th graders challenging his authority, Principal Stone appeared again. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she announced to no one in particular, her voice carrying across the room. "Substitute teachers simply cannot maintain proper classroom management with this many students." The children fell silent, sensing tension they didn't understand. Marcus felt their eyes upon him, waiting to see how he would respond to the public criticism. In his former life, disrespect from a superior would have been unthinkable. Here, he simply absorbed it. "You're right, Mrs. Stone," Marcus replied calmly. "It is challenging. But these children deserve our best effort regardless of circumstances." His response caught her off guard, the unexpected humility deflating her prepared lecture. The afternoon sun cast longer shadows through the classroom windows as Marcus returned to his dual teaching responsibilities. The 5th graders had settled into their math worksheets when the first sign of trouble appeared. A maintenance worker Marcus didn't recognize walked past the classroom window, moving with purpose that seemed inconsistent with routine repairs. Marcus's attention sharpened automatically. The man's gait, the way he scanned the hallway, the bulge beneath his left jacket that could be tools or something else entirely. These observations processed in milliseconds, habits from another life that refused to fade despite 2 years of civilian routine. The school's intercom crackled to life with unusual static. "Attention all staff and students," came Principal Stone's voice, but something was wrong. Her normally authoritative tone carried an edge of barely controlled panic. "We are implementing an immediate lockdown drill. All students and teachers should move away from windows and doors immediately." But this wasn't a drill. Marcus knew it instantly. The timing was wrong. Stone's voice betrayed genuine fear, and most importantly, drills were never called during afternoon instruction without advance notice. His military training kicked in, every sense heightened as he scanned for additional threats. The children looked confused, their young faces turning to him for guidance. Marcus forced his expression to remain calm even as his mind shifted into tactical assessment mode. 47 students across 2 rooms, multiple exit points, unknown number of potential threats, limited communication with outside authority. "Okay, everyone," Marcus said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We're going to play a very important quiet game. I need you to move away from the windows and sit against the back wall. Make it fun, like you're secret agents." The students responded to his calm confidence, moving without panic to the designated area. Marcus positioned himself between the children and the classroom door, his body automatically adopting a protective stance that felt as natural as breathing. Through the small window in the door, he caught a glimpse of teachers hurrying down the hallway, their faces etched with confusion and growing alarm. The maintenance worker he had noticed earlier was nowhere to be seen, but Marcus could hear unfamiliar footsteps echoing from somewhere deeper in the building. His phone buzzed with an emergency alert from the district office. "Active threat on campus. Law enforcement en route. Estimated arrival 15 minutes. 15 minutes. In combat situations, Marcus had learned that 15 minutes could mean the difference between casualties and survival. His training told him to secure the immediate area, assess available resources, and prepare for multiple scenarios. The children watched him with trust that was both humbling and terrifying. Emma was somewhere in this building, probably just as scared and confused as these students. Every parental instinct screamed at him to find her, but his tactical experience demanded he secure his current position first. Marcus moved with quiet efficiency, barricading the classroom door with desks while maintaining his reassuring demeanor. The children remained remarkably calm, responding to his confidence with the natural trust young people place in adults who demonstrate true leadership under pressure. "Mr. Chen," whispered Amy Patterson, one of his third graders. "Are we going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart," Marcus replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "I'm going to make sure every single one of you gets home safely to your families tonight." The sound of running footsteps echoed from the main hallway, followed by what sounded like shouting. Marcus positioned himself closer to the door, listening intently to distinguish between normal evacuation sounds and something more dangerous. His training allowed him to identify at least 3 different voices, 2 of which belonged to school staff members in obvious distress. Through his classroom window, Marcus spotted other teachers struggling to maintain control as panic began spreading throughout the building. In the distance, he could see Principal Stone standing frozen in her office doorway, her face pale with shock as the reality of the situation overwhelmed her administrative training. The emergency alert system buzzed again with updated information. Multiple classrooms compromised. Unknown subject armed and mobile throughout building. All personnel maintain lockdown positions. Marcus felt the familiar calm that had served him well in combat zones settle over his mind. This was no longer about following lesson plans or adhering to substitute teacher protocols. 200 children in this building needed protection, and their lives might depend on decisions made in the next few minutes. "What part of this father's courage resonates with you?" he thought briefly, remembering that parents around the world faced moments when everything they were came down to protecting those they loved. Moving to the connecting door between his 2 assigned classrooms, Marcus quickly assessed the layout. The older students in the fifth-grade room had begun whispering among themselves, their anxiety growing as the sounds from the hallway became more urgent. Without hesitation, Marcus made the decision that would reveal everything he had worked so hard to hide. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice taking on the unmistakable tone of command that had once directed soldiers in life-and-death situations. "I need everyone to stay exactly where you are and follow my instructions without question. Can you do that for me?" The children nodded, instinctively recognizing the authority in his voice even if they couldn't identify its source. Marcus began implementing protocols that had nothing to do with substitute teaching and everything to do with tactical response. He organized the children into small groups, positioning them in corners that provided maximum protection from potential lines of fire. His movements were precise and purposeful, each decision based on years of training most civilians never received. The sound of breaking glass echoed from somewhere near the main office, followed by screams that chilled Marcus to his core. Without hesitation, he opened his classroom door and stepped into the hallway, despite every lockdown protocol demanding he remain barricaded inside. "Stay exactly where you are," he instructed the children firmly. "Do not move until I come back for you." The hallway stretched before him like a combat zone he recognized all too well. Other teachers huddled behind their locked doors, paralyzed by fear and procedure. Marcus moved with the fluid precision of someone trained to navigate dangerous territory, his senses heightened to detect any threat before it could materialize. He found Janet Rodriguez crouched behind the reception desk, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to communicate with emergency services on a phone that kept cutting out. When she saw Marcus approaching, her eyes widened with desperate hope. "Mr. Chen, thank God," she whispered. "There's someone in the building with a weapon. Principal Stone locked herself in her office and won't come out. The kindergarten teachers are trapped with 60 children in the gym, and we can't reach them." Marcus knelt beside her, his training automatically cataloging the information and formulating response strategies. "Have you ever had to step up in an emergency?" he wondered, thinking of how ordinary people were called to extraordinary actions in moments of crisis. "Janet, I need you to listen carefully," Marcus said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to giving orders under pressure. "Call 911 again and tell them we have an experienced tactical responder on scene coordinating civilian protection. Give them my name and tell them I'm establishing secure zones for student evacuation." Janet stared at him in confusion. "Tactical responder? Mr. Chen, you're a substitute teacher." "No," Marcus replied quietly, his carefully constructed civilian identity finally cracking under the weight of necessity. "I'm not." The sound of children crying echoed from the direction of the gymnasium, 60 kindergartners whose safety now depended on decisions Marcus would make in the next crucial minutes. His former commanding officer's words echoed in his memory about the difference between those who freeze and those who act when lives hang in the balance. Marcus stood, every movement reflecting the bearing of someone who had commanded troops in combat zones around the world. The path to the gymnasium required crossing the main courtyard, an exposed area that violated every tactical principle Marcus had learned about moving through hostile territory. But 60 kindergartners and their teachers were trapped, and waiting for law enforcement meant accepting casualties he refused to tolerate. Moving with calculated precision, Marcus advanced through the school corridors using techniques that had kept him alive in Afghanistan. He cleared each corner systematically, his senses attuned to every sound and shadow that might indicate danger. The maintenance worker he had spotted earlier appeared briefly at the far end of the hallway before disappearing into the administrative wing. At the gymnasium entrance, Marcus found chaos. 3 kindergarten teachers had barricaded themselves inside with their students, but the children's terrified cries could be heard through the doors. Mrs. Campbell, the lead kindergarten teacher, spotted Marcus through the window and frantically gestured for him to stay away. Marcus approached the door calmly, his voice carrying through the reinforced glass. "Mrs. Campbell, this is Marcus Chen. I'm going to get you and the children out safely, but I need you to follow my instructions exactly." "Mr. Chen," Mrs. Campbell called back, her voice shaking with fear. "We can't open the doors. There's someone with a weapon somewhere in the building." "I know," Marcus replied, his tone conveying absolute confidence. "I'm trained for this situation. Trust me to protect these children." What he did next would have seemed impossible to anyone who knew him only as the quiet substitute teacher. Marcus began implementing an evacuation protocol he had used countless times in combat zones, adapted now for civilian circumstances but executed with the same precision that had saved lives in far more dangerous situations. Through the gymnasium windows, he could see the children huddled together, their small faces etched with confusion and terror. Among them, he spotted Emma's best friend Sarah, which meant his daughter was likely in the same area of the building he had just secured. Share your thoughts on what real heroism looks like, Marcus reflected, knowing that true courage often meant ordinary people making extraordinary choices when others needed protection. Within minutes, Marcus had established a secure corridor from the gymnasium to the main exit, coordinating with Janet to ensure emergency vehicles could access the evacuation point. His military training allowed him to manage multiple variables simultaneously while maintaining the calm demeanor that kept panic from spreading. The first group of kindergartners emerged under his protection, their teachers amazed by the systematic efficiency of an evacuation they had never seen executed with such precision. Principal Stone, finally emerging from her office, watched in stunned silence as the substitute teacher she had dismissed transformed into someone she clearly didn't recognize. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air as Marcus completed the kindergarten evacuation. Police vehicles and emergency response teams surrounded the school perimeter, their tactical units preparing for a crisis they would discover had already been contained by someone they had never heard of. Detective Sarah Williams, the first responder to breach the main entrance, found Marcus calmly coordinating the final stages of student evacuation. Her trained eyes immediately recognized something that didn't fit the scenario her dispatch had described. "Sir, I need you to identify yourself and explain your position in this building," Detective Williams commanded, her weapon drawn but lowered as she assessed the controlled situation before her. Marcus turned toward her with the measured movements of someone accustomed to interacting with law enforcement in operational contexts. "Detective, my name is Marcus Chen. I'm a substitute teacher who implemented emergency protocols to secure civilian casualties during the initial response phase." Detective Williams studied his bearing, the precise way he communicated, and the obvious respect the school staff showed toward his leadership. This wasn't the panicked civilian she had expected to encounter. "Mr. Chen, what's your background that enabled you to coordinate this level of emergency response?" she asked, her suspicion growing as she observed the tactical efficiency of the evacuation he had orchestrated. Before Marcus could respond, Superintendent Dr. Patricia Williams arrived on scene, having received emergency notification about the crisis at one of her district schools. As she surveyed the situation, her experienced eye caught details that others missed. Dr. Williams had spent 30 years in education, working with teachers, administrators, and support staff from every conceivable background. She recognized leadership when she saw it, and Marcus Chen displayed command presence that transcended any substitute teaching position. The maintenance worker who had triggered the initial threat had been apprehended in the administrative wing, his intentions unclear but his presence no longer a danger to anyone in the building. What impressed Dr. Williams most was how Marcus had managed to neutralize the threat to 200 children without waiting for outside intervention. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Williams approached him as the last students were safely evacuated to the designated assembly area. "I'm Patricia Williams, District Superintendent. I need to understand what happened here today and how you were able to manage this crisis so effectively." Marcus met her gaze with the quiet dignity that had defined his interaction with every authority figure since arriving at Riverside Elementary. "Dr. Williams, I did what any parent would do when children needed protection. The specifics of my background are less important than ensuring these students return safely to their families." But Dr. Williams was not easily deflected. Her years in education had taught her to recognize exceptional individuals, and Marcus Chen's actions went far beyond parental instinct. The systematic evacuation, the tactical coordination, the calm leadership under extreme pressure, all pointed to professional training that had nothing to do with substitute teaching. Word of the crisis and its resolution spread quickly through the community. Parents arrived at the school in waves, their faces etched with panic that gradually transformed to relief as they found their children safe and unharmed. The evacuation area buzzed with conversations about the substitute teacher who had somehow managed to protect everyone. Emma Chen spotted her father across the assembly area and ran toward him with tears streaming down her face. Marcus knelt to catch her in his arms, his composed exterior finally cracking as he held the most important person in his world. "Daddy, I was so scared," Emma whispered against his shoulder. "But Mrs. Rodriguez said you helped save everyone. How did you know what to do?" Marcus held her tightly, struggling to find words that would satisfy her curiosity without revealing truths he had hoped to keep buried forever. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people learn things in their lives that they hope they'll never need to use. Today was one of those times when old knowledge became important again." Principal Stone approached them hesitantly, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by obvious embarrassment and growing respect. "Mr. Chen," she began, her voice uncertain. "I owe you an apology. I clearly misjudged your capabilities and your value to our school community." Marcus stood slowly, still holding Emma's hand, his expression remaining gentle despite the tension of the day. "Mrs. Stone, we all do what we think is best for the children. Today just required different skills than usual classroom management." The crowd of parents had begun to notice Marcus, pointing him out to one another as word spread about his role in protecting their children. Some approached to express gratitude, their voices filled with emotion as they realized how differently this day could have ended. Dr. Williams watched these interactions with growing fascination. She observed how Marcus deflected praise, how he redirected credit to the teachers and staff, and how he maintained his humble demeanor despite obvious leadership abilities that had saved lives. Janet Rodriguez appeared at Dr. Williams' side, still shaken by the day's events but eager to share what she had witnessed. "Doctor, you should know that Mr. Chen knew exactly what to do from the moment this started. He moved like someone with military training, gave orders like he'd done it before, and stayed calm when everyone else was falling apart." Dr. Williams nodded thoughtfully, her suspicions crystallizing into certainty. She had worked with enough military families over the years to recognize the signs. Marcus Chen's actions today revealed training and experience that went far beyond civilian emergency response. As the crowd began to disperse and parents departed with their children, Dr. Williams approached Marcus directly. "Mr. Chen, might I have a private word with you before you leave today?" Marcus glanced down at Emma, who was still clinging to his hand with the fierce grip of a child who had been genuinely frightened. "Of course, Dr. Williams." "Emma, can you wait for Daddy by the car for just a few minutes?" Emma nodded solemnly and walked toward the parking area, but not before giving her father one more tight hug. Dr. Williams waited until they were alone before speaking again. "Mr. Chen, I've been in education for 30 years, and I've never seen a civilian handle an emergency with the level of expertise you demonstrated today. Your tactical knowledge, your leadership under pressure, your ability to coordinate complex evacuation procedures, these aren't skills that come from substitute teaching experience." Marcus remained silent, his expression neutral but not defensive. Dr. Williams could see him weighing his response carefully, considering how much truth he was willing to reveal. "I spent 12 years in Special Forces," Marcus said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "Combat medic with multiple deployments. When I became a single father, I chose to leave that life behind and find work that would give Emma the stability she deserved." The admission hung in the air between them like a bridge being built. Dr. Williams felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place as she understood the magnitude of what Marcus had sacrificed for his daughter's sake. "Special Forces," she repeated softly. "And you've been working as a substitute teacher, being dismissed and undervalued, when you have the kind of leadership experience most organizations would prize. If this story touches your heart, let us know where you're listening from," Marcus thought, remembering how many parents around the world made similar sacrifices for their children's futures. Marcus shrugged slightly, a gesture that encompassed years of choosing Emma's needs over his own recognition. She needed a father who came home every night, not someone who deployed overseas for months at a time. "The substitute teaching pays enough for us to get by, and it keeps me close to her school." Dr. Williams studied his face, seeing the quiet dignity that had impressed her from their first interaction. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Williams said, her voice taking on the tone of someone making an important decision. "What happened here today proves that we've been wasting your talents and our students have been missing out on exceptional leadership. I want to offer you a permanent position in our district." Marcus looked surprised, his carefully controlled expression showing genuine emotion for the first time since the crisis began. "Dr. Williams, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not certified for permanent teaching positions. My background is military, not educational." "That's exactly why I need you," Dr. Williams replied firmly. "I'm not talking about a traditional teaching role. Our district has been struggling to develop comprehensive emergency response protocols. We need someone to design and implement crisis management training for all our schools, someone who understands both education and tactical response." The offer hung between them as Marcus processed what she was proposing. After 2 years of being dismissed as just another substitute, someone finally recognized the value of his experience and wanted to build upon it rather than ignore it. The position would involve working with teachers, administrators, and local emergency services to create response protocols that could protect students across the entire district. It would mean steady employment, respect for his expertise, and the opportunity to ensure that no school faced a crisis without proper preparation. Moreover, it would allow him to use his military training in service of something meaningful, protecting children rather than engaging in combat. The skills that had defined his identity for 12 years could find new purpose in civilian life. But most importantly, it would provide Emma with the stability she deserved while keeping him close enough to be the father she needed. Marcus glanced toward the parking area where Emma waited patiently by their modest sedan, her small figure a reminder of everything he had given up and everything he had gained in return. The decision felt like completing a circle that had been broken when he left the military. "Dr. Williams," he said slowly, "I would be honored to accept that position. On one condition. I want to ensure that every teacher in this district feels valued and supported, regardless of whether they're permanent staff or substitutes. Today proved that anyone can be called upon to protect these children." Dr. Williams smiled, recognizing in his condition the same leadership philosophy that had enabled him to save lives under pressure. "Agreed, Mr. Chen. When can you start?" "Monday morning," Marcus replied, extending his hand to shake on the agreement that would transform his life once again. As they walked toward the parking area, Dr. Williams reflected on how extraordinary people often hid in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true capabilities. 3 months later, Marcus Chen stood before a conference room filled with teachers, administrators, and emergency responders from across the district. The quiet substitute who had once been dismissed by Principal Stone now commanded respect as the district's director of crisis management and safety protocols. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Marcus had developed comprehensive emergency response training that combined his military expertise with deep understanding of educational environments. Schools throughout the district now operated with confidence, knowing their staff possessed the knowledge and tools to protect students in any crisis. Emma Chen sat in the front row of the school auditorium during the first parent safety presentation, her face glowing with pride as she watched her father explain how ordinary people could learn to respond extraordinarily when children needed protection. The little girl who had once worried about her father being invisible now beamed as community members sought his guidance and expertise. Principal Stone approached Marcus after the presentation, her earlier prejudices completely erased by months of witnessing his positive impact on the district. "Mr. Chen," she said, extending her hand warmly. "I wanted to personally thank you for the training you provided our staff. We feel prepared and confident in ways we never imagined possible." Marcus shook her hand graciously, his response reflecting the same humility that had defined him even during his days as an undervalued substitute. "Mrs. Stone, every person in this room has the potential to be a protector when circumstances require it. My job is simply to help them recognize and develop those capabilities." The evening concluded with parents and community members expressing gratitude for the sense of security Marcus had brought to their schools. Children throughout the district attended classes knowing their teachers possessed both educational expertise and emergency response training. As Marcus and Emma walked to their car after the presentation, she slipped her small hand into his and looked up with the wisdom that children sometimes possess. "Daddy," she said thoughtfully, "I'm glad everyone finally knows how special you are. But I always knew." Marcus smiled, understanding that his daughter's love and respect had never depended on recognition from others. The greatest transformation hadn't been his professional advancement, but rather the realization that true worth didn't require external validation. Subscribe for more stories of hidden heroes among us, Marcus thought, grateful for the journey that had led him from invisible substitute to valued leader, but mostly grateful for the little girl whose love had made every sacrifice worthwhile. Their modest sedan pulled away from Riverside Elementary, where the lights still glowed warmly in classrooms now protected by protocols designed by a father who had chosen love over glory and found both in the end.